Professor Quacks adjusted his translucent neck membrane nervously as he hovered at the spaceport arrival gate. Today marked the culmination of his 17-cycle bureaucratic battle, the first ever human galactic exchange program. "Stop fidgeting," his assistant Vrox whispered through a communication appendage. "Your anxiety pheromones are making the welcoming committee nauseous." "I can't help it," Quacks replied, his 6 eyes blinking out of sync. "Do you realize what's at stake? Humans are notoriously unpredictable. What if they hate the dormitories? What if they're allergic to our atmospheric mix? What if you calm down before you molt right here in public?" Vrox interrupted, the ship's already docking. The sleek vessel eased into the bay with a pneumatic hiss. Quacks straightened his ceremonial sash and mentally rehearsed his welcome speech one final time. The university board had been explicit: make a good impression or find a new tenure track. The ship's door slid open, revealing a lanky human male with disheveled brown hair, and what appeared to be some sort of fabric binding around one upper appendage. An arm, Quacks recalled from the orientation materials. "Hey there," the human called out with alarming volume. "I'm Todd Walker. Sorry I'm like an hour late. Had a little skateboarding accident before departure." He gestured vaguely at his wrapped arm. "Anyway, this place looks rad. You must be Professor." He squinted at a device in his functional hand. Quacks, the professor corrected, all 6 eyes widening. "Are you injured, exchange student Todd? Shall I summon emergency medical services?" Todd waved dismissively. "This thing? Nah, just a minor fracture. Doctor said it'll heal in like 6 weeks. No biggie." Vrox leaned toward Quacks. "Did the human just casually mention a broken skeletal structure?" "I believe so," Quacks whispered back. "How fascinating." Todd was already wandering toward the baggage retrieval area, seemingly unconcerned with both his injury and the fact that he'd completely derailed Quacks's meticulously prepared welcome ceremony. So where's everybody else?" Todd asked, hoisting a large backpack with his good arm. The orientation packet mentioned other humans. "Exchange student Michaela Winters will arrive tomorrow," Quacks explained, trying to regain control of the situation. There were only 2 human applicants for the program this semester. Cool. Just call her Mika though. Nobody uses her full name except her mom when she's in trouble." Todd grinned. "So what's the food situation here?" "I'm starving." The welcoming committee, consisting of 12 faculty members and 37 students, exchanged concerned glances. The human was nothing like the diplomatic formal representatives they'd expected. Among the students, a small purple-tinged alien with 4 arms, and an excessive number of data tablets clutched to her thorax pushed forward. "Greetings, human Todd. I am Zella, 3rd-year xenobiology major. I have several thousand questions about your species, beginning with your apparent disregard for skeletal integrity. Is this typical human behavior, or are you an outlier?" Todd laughed. "Oh man, you're intense. I like you." "Yeah, I guess humans break stuff all the time. My buddy Jake once broke both legs trying to jump his dirt bike over his dad's car. He still finished the race though." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Several students began frantically taking notes. "Fascinating," Zella whispered, her ocular ridges quivering with excitement. "The pain threshold must be extraordinary." Quacks clapped his appendages together to regain everyone's attention. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion at the university. The transport shuttle is waiting, and I'm sure exchange student Todd would like to see his accommodations." "Lead the way, Professor," Todd said cheerfully. "Just a heads up though, the orientation materials didn't mention gravity specifications. It feels a little heavy here. Not complaining just means I'll get wicked upper body strength by the end of the semester." He flexed his non-injured arm. As they boarded the shuttle, Zella maneuvered to sit next to Todd, her data tablets precariously balanced. "I've been studying humans for 3 cycles, she said, her voice vibrating with barely contained enthusiasm. "Your species' ability to survive on a death world is legendary. Is it true you voluntarily expose yourselves to harmful solar radiation for aesthetic purposes?" "You mean tanning?" "Yeah, some people do that." Todd shrugged. "Not really my thing. I just burn and peel like a molting lizard." "And you consume neurotoxins for recreational purposes," Zella continued, her stylus poised. "Oh, alcohol? Sure, who doesn't love a good beer? Well, except Mormons, I guess." The shuttle hummed through the university's soaring crystalline spires. Other students pressed closer, abandoning all pretense of disinterest. "What about your fractured appendage?" one bold student called out. "The pain must be excruciating." Todd looked down at his cast as if he'd forgotten it was there. Nah, they gave me some painkillers. It's just annoying because I can't play video games properly. Had to switch to turn-based stuff for a while." Quacks exchanged a meaningful look with Vrox. This casual attitude toward injury wasn't covered in any of the briefing materials. Perhaps humans were even more resilient than the university had been led to believe. As the shuttle docked at the dormitory complex, Quacks made a mental note to contact the medical department. If 2 fragile humans were going to be casualties of his exchange program, his academic career would be over before it began. "Here we are, exchange student Todd. We've modified this entire wing for human habitation," Quacks announced proudly. "Oxygen levels, temperature, pressure, all adjusted to Earth standards." Todd stepped into the room and whistled appreciatively. "Sweet digs, way better than my apartment back home. And please, just call me Todd. The exchange student title makes me feel like I'm in trouble." "As you wish, Todd." The professor tried the informal address, finding it strangely uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Zella had somehow already set up a small recording station in the corner of Todd's room. "If you don't mind, I'll be documenting your adaptation to our environment. For science. Not 24/7, I hope." "A guy needs privacy," Todd said, raising an eyebrow. "Of course not," Zella assured him quickly. "Only during waking hours." Todd laughed, assuming she was joking. She wasn't. "I'll leave you to get settled," Quacks said, backing toward the door. "Classes begin tomorrow at first light. Your schedule has been uploaded to your university-issued communication device." "Cool. Thanks, Prof." Todd flopped backward onto the bed, winced slightly when his broken arm was jostled, then immediately returned to his relaxed demeanor. As Quacks and Vrox walked back to the administration building, the professor couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. "Did you notice how casually he referenced his injury?" Quacks asked. "Perhaps humans have evolved beyond pain," Vrox suggested. "Their planet is 70% dihydrogen monoxide, has extreme temperature variations, regular geological upheavals, and countless predators. Pain sensitivity would be a significant evolutionary disadvantage." Or perhaps, Quacks mused, they've simply grown accustomed to it. Back in the dorm room, Todd had already fallen asleep, snoring softly. Zella sat in the corner, recording every detail, and occasionally muttering to herself about extraordinary pain tolerance and revolutionary research opportunities. Little did anyone know that Todd's casual attitude toward his broken arm was about to spark a complete misunderstanding of human physiology that would ripple through the entire university. And it would only take one more human to turn that misunderstanding completely on its head. By morning, news of the injured human had spread across campus. Todd entered his first class, Comparative Xenobiology 101, to find every seat filled except for a specially reinforced one at the front with his name projected above it in holographic letters. Thanks." Todd slid into the seat, awkwardly balancing his tablet on his cast. Professor Garblox, a gelatinous mass of neural tissue suspended in a hovering containment field, oozed forward. "Welcome, human Todd. We are honored by your presence and deeply respectful of your bravery in attending despite your significant physical trauma." Todd blinked. "My what now? Oh, you mean my arm? It's really not a big deal." A collective murmur rippled through the class. In the third row, Zella was frantically taking notes, her 4 arms working independently. "As today's lesson pertains to biological resilience across species," Garblox continued, "perhaps you would enlighten us regarding human pain management. Your medical science must be extraordinarily advanced." "Well, I took some ibuprofen this morning." Todd shrugged. "Honestly, the cast is more annoying than painful. Itches like crazy." More murmurs, more note-taking. After class, Zella cornered Todd in the hallway, 3 of her arms clutching various scanning devices while the 4th held out a tablet. "I've been researching human medical protocols," she said, vibrating with excitement. "I discovered something called a pain scale. Is it true humans quantify their suffering from 1 to 10? Yeah, doctors ask that all the time. Rate your pain from 1 to 10. Super subjective though. Zella's ocular ridges shot up. And where would you place your fractured limb on this scale? Todd considered. I dunno, maybe a 3, 4 if I bump it against something. The scanners in Zella's hands went wild. Fascinating. A bone fracture merits only a 3, when your scale goes to 10. She leaned closer. What would constitute a 10? Todd scratched his head. I guess, being on fire, or kidney stones. My aunt had those and said she'd rather give birth to triplets again. By lunchtime Zella had compiled her findings into a preliminary report that spread through the university's academic network like wildfire. Todd found himself surrounded by curious aliens in the cafeteria. Is it true humans voluntarily endure pain for recreational purposes? Asked a tentacled student from the physics department. If you mean sports, then yeah, Todd replied through a mouthful of what he hoped was the alien equivalent of a sandwich. No pain, no gain. Right. This statement caused such a stir that 3 professors from the philosophy department immediately left to revise their lecture notes. Todd was halfway through his meal when a commotion at the cafeteria entrance drew everyone's attention. A human woman with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail strode in sporting a university jacket and scanning the room with alert eyes. Yo Mika, Todd called out, waving his good arm. Over here. Michaela Mika Winters navigated through the crowd of staring aliens, dropped her bag and gave Todd a friendly punch on his good shoulder. Dude, what did you do to your arm? She asked, sliding onto the bench beside him. Tried that new ramp at the skate park before leaving. Totally worth it though, got some sick air. Mika rolled her eyes. Classic Todd, always breaking something. This casual exchange caused such a sensation that a nearby Praxian student fainted, their crystalline structure temporarily destabilizing from shock. Are all humans as resilient as Todd? Someone called out. Mika looked confused. Resilient? This guy cried for 20 minutes when we watched Marley and Me in freshman film studies. Dude, not cool, Todd protested. Zella pushed forward through the crowd, all 4 arms now holding different tablets. Human Mika, I've been documenting Todd's extraordinary pain threshold. Would you say your threshold is comparable? Mika snorted. I grew up with 3 older brothers who thought mercies was a foreign concept. Pain is just weakness leaving the body. The cafeteria erupted in excited chatter. Zella looked like she might explode from scientific ecstasy. I need both of you to visit the medical bay, she declared. For research purposes. The university's medical bay was a marvel of galactic healthcare technology. Todd and Mika sat side by side on diagnostic beds, while Dr. Plex, the head physician, examined Todd's cast with 15 optical appendages. Primitive but effective immobilization, the doctor noted. However, our scans indicate the fracture is more severe than reported. Are you certain your pain level is only 3? Feels fine, Todd insisted. The Earth doctor said it was a clean break. Dr. Plex turned to Mika. And you human Mika, any injuries to report? Just some bruises from rugby practice last week, she said dismissively. Nothing interesting. Dr. Plex's appendages twirled in agitation. Our scans show 2 cracked ribs and significant soft tissue damage. Mika looked genuinely surprised. Huh, that explains the stabbing pain when I laugh. Thought I just pulled a muscle. The medical staff exchanged alarmed looks. Zella, who had somehow gained medical bay access despite having no medical qualifications whatsoever, was recording everything. This confirms my hypothesis, she announced to the room. Humans have developed psychological mechanisms to minimize pain perception. Their pain scale must be exponentially more intense than we realized. She turned to the bewildered humans. What horrors must constitute a tent on your scale if these injuries barely register? Before either human could respond, alarms blared throughout the campus. Professor Quacks's voice echoed over the communication system. Attention all faculty and students. The annual wilderness expedition to Nexus 7 departs tomorrow at dawn. All xenobiology students must attend, including our distinguished human guests. Prepare accordingly. Zella's eyes gleamed with scientific fervor. A wilderness expedition. The perfect opportunity to observe humans in a potentially hazardous environment. Todd and Mika exchanged glances. Should we tell them we're not actually superhuman? Todd whispered. And miss watching them freak out over every little thing. Mika grinned. No way, this is going to be hilarious. Little did they know the aliens' misconception about human pain tolerance was about to create a perfect storm of confusion, one that would only grow more chaotic when confronted with the reality of how humans actually handled pain when things got serious. Dawn on a university planet looks much the same as dawn anywhere else, except when three suns rise simultaneously and the sky briefly turns neon purple. Todd and Mika stood at the shuttle bay, adjusting their expedition packs while surrounded by anxious alien students. "Are your environmental suits comfortable, humans?" Professor Quacks hovered nearby, all six eyes blinking rapidly. "We've reinforced them with extra padding and 16 redundant life support systems." Todd struggled to move in the bulky outfit. Professor, Mika and I can't bend our knees in these." "A small price to pay for your safety," Quacks declared. "The wilderness of Nexus 7 is no place for fragile beings." Mika sighed. "We're not made of glass, Professor. Our standard university field gear would be fine." "Absolutely not," Zella interjected, approaching with what appeared to be a floating medical station. "My research indicates humans require constant monitoring when exposed to non-Earth environments." The shuttle ride to Nexus 7 was uncomfortable, to say the least. Todd and Mika sat inside a special containment bubble while their classmates pressed against the transparent barrier, watching their every move like rare zoo exhibits. "How's your arm?" Mika whispered. "Itchy." "How are your ribs?" "Only hurts when I laugh, so naturally this situation is killing me." They snickered together, causing nearby aliens to frantically check their vital sign monitors. Nexus 7 was actually quite beautiful, a lush moon with swirling lavender vegetation and crystal formations that chimed musically in the breeze. Unfortunately, the humans couldn't properly appreciate it through their ridiculously over-engineered helmets. "Today's assignment," Professor Quacks announced, "is to collect samples of the Southern Ridge fungal colonies. Teams of 4, please." Naturally, every student wanted the humans in their group, resulting in a minor scuffle that only ended when Quacks assigned Todd and Mika to separate teams. Todd found himself paired with Zella and 2 other students, a rock-like being named Granulo and a levitating gas cloud called Mist. Their progress was excruciatingly slow because Zella insisted on scanning the ground before each of Todd's steps. "There could be microscopic lifeforms you might crush," she explained. 4 arms working different scanning devices simultaneously. "Zella, I appreciate the concern, but at this rate, we'll need 20 years to reach the ridge," Todd said, trying to take a normal step only to be physically restrained by Granulo. "Caution," the rock alien rumbled. "That vegetation might be carnivorous." Todd looked at the tiny purple sprout, no bigger than a daisy. "I think I can defend myself against killer space daisies." Meanwhile, Mika's group wasn't faring much better. Her teammates had formed a protective triangle around her, refusing to let her carry anything heavier than a sample vial. "I'm not an invalid," she protested as a tentacled classmate tried to help her step over a small rock. "I lift weights heavier than most of you every morning." "But your fractured ribs," her teammate gasped. "Any strain could cause a punctured lung." "They're just hairline fractures. I've played full rugby matches with worse." This statement caused such alarm that one of her teammates sent an emergency communication to Professor Quacks, who immediately dispatched a hovering medical drone to monitor Mika more closely. By midday, both humans were at their breaking point. They managed to rendezvous near a crystal formation, while their teammates argued about proper human handling protocols. "I'm going to lose my mind," Todd muttered, awkwardly trying to scratch inside his cast with a sample collection stick. "Granulo won't even let me pee without offering to help." "At least you get bathroom breaks," Mika grumbled. "My team thinks human bladders are so fragile they might rupture from use." Todd snorted. "We need to find a way to convince them we're not delicate flowers or they'll bubble wrap us for the entire semester." "Maybe we should fake an injury," Mika suggested. "Something minor but dramatic. Might backfire. They'd probably put us in medically induced comas for our own safety." Their conversation was interrupted when Professor Quacks floated over, trailed by a worried-looking Zella. "Wonderful news, humans," Quacks announced. "We've discovered a fascinating cave system nearby. The crystalline formations inside are said to respond to sound frequencies. They glow and change color when stimulated by certain vocal ranges." "That actually sounds pretty cool," Mika admitted. "Indeed, And since human vocal cords produce a wider range of frequencies than most galactic species, your participation would be most valuable. Quacks hesitated. Of course, if you feel it would be too strenuous, we're in. Both humans replied instantly, eager for any chance to do something other than be babied. The cave entrance was a spectacular arch of spiraling crystal, emitting a soft humming noise as wind passed through. The expedition group gathered at the entrance while Quacks distributed specialized recording equipment. Remember, touch nothing without prior scanning, the professor instructed. Some formations may be sensitive. Todd rolled his eyes behind his oversized helmet. The overprotectiveness was starting to feel ridiculous, especially since the alien seemed oblivious to the fact that humans weren't particularly fragile compared to, say, mist, who could be dispersed by a strong breeze. As they entered the cave, the crystals began to glow with soft blue light, responding to their footsteps and voices. The effect was mesmerizing, ripples of color flowing through the cavern like visual echoes. Humans, would you mind vocalizing at different pitches? Quacks requested. We'd like to observe the crystalline response. Todd and Mika exchanged glances, shrugged, and began an impromptu scale. As their voices rose and fell, the crystals pulsed with increasingly vibrant colors, blues shifting to purples, then reds, and finally a brilliant gold that illuminated the entire cavern. Extraordinary, Zella exclaimed, all four arms recording frantically. The crystals are responding more dramatically to human vocalization than to any other species. For the first time since arriving, the humans felt like valuable contributors rather than fragile curiosities. The moment was actually rather beautiful, until the ground beneath them began to tremble.
Professor? Todd called out. Is it supposed to do that? Quacks's eyes widened in alarm. Resonance vibrations. The human vocal frequencies must have everyone out. Now, the cavern shuddered violently. Crystal shards began falling from the ceiling as the expedition members scrambled toward the exit. In the chaos, Todd lost sight of Mika but could hear her shouting directions to panicked students. As they neared the entrance, a particularly violent tremor shook the cave. Todd looked up just in time to see a massive crystal formation breaking free directly above a group of students. Without thinking, he lunged forward, good arm outstretched, and shoved 3 alien students clear of the falling crystal. The formation crashed down, missing the students but partially blocking the exit path. Is everyone okay? Todd called out, doing a quick head count. Wait, where's Zella and Granulo? A faint voice called from deeper in the cavern. We're trapped. A section collapsed. Professor Quacks hovered anxiously near the cave entrance. We need to evacuate immediately. The entire system could collapse. We can't leave them behind, Todd insisted, already climbing over the rubble toward the voice. Human Todd, your injury. Quacks protested. You mustn't, but Todd was already gone, disappearing into the increasingly unstable cavern. Mika stepped forward. I'm going to. Get everyone else out and call for backup. Before anyone could stop her, she followed Todd's path, disappearing into the glowing darkness as the next stage of their misunderstood pain threshold saga was about to unfold. The deeper section of the cave pulsed with unstable energy as Todd picked his way through the fallen crystal debris. His environmental suit was torn in several places, and he'd finally abandoned the restrictive helmet after it cracked. Zella, Granulo, can you hear me? He called out, wincing as his broken arm throbbed. The painkillers were definitely wearing off. Here, came Zella's muffled voice. Behind the magenta formation, Todd rounded a corner and found a small chamber where a cave-in had trapped Zella, Granulo and 2 other students. A massive crystalline column had collapsed, blocking their only exit. Todd, you came back for us. Zella's 4 arms gesticulated wildly. But your protective gear is compromised. The atmospheric contamination could. I'm fine, Todd interrupted. Are any of you hurt? Merely trapped, Granulo rumbled. But the resonance damage is spreading. This chamber will not remain stable for long. As if to emphasize the point, another tremor shook the cave, dislodging smaller crystals from the ceiling. Todd ducked as they shattered around him. Todd, Mika's voice echoed from behind. She appeared, also helmetless, with a deep cut above her eyebrow dripping blood down her face. Found you. Professors evacuated everyone else and called for emergency services, but they're at least 30 minutes out. Zella stared in horror at Mika's injury. You're bleeding, human vital fluid is escaping. This is catastrophic. Mika touched her forehead. It's just a scratch. We need to move this column, Todd said, examining the blockage. If we can shift it about 15 degrees, there should be enough space for everyone to squeeze through. Impossible, Granulo objected. Even I cannot move such mass, and my density is 3 times that of solid neutronium. Todd and Mika exchanged a look. Leverage, they said simultaneously. Working quickly, they gathered fallen crystal shards and positioned them as makeshift levers beneath the column. Another tremor hit, stronger than before, sending a fresh shower of crystal fragments down. We're out of time, Mika muttered. On 3, we push together. They positioned themselves on opposite sides of the longest lever. As they prepared to push, the ground shifted again, and Mika suddenly gasped, clutching her shoulder. What happened? Todd asked sharply. Dislocated my shoulder, she said through gritted teeth. The trapped aliens watched in horror as Mika calmly assessed her injury. No time to deal with it properly. Brace yourself, this is gonna be gross. Before anyone could react, Mika slammed her shoulder against the cave wall. There was a sickening pop, followed by her casual, "There, back in place. Let's try again." Zella made a high-pitched keening noise of distress. That was, how are you still conscious? Practice, Mika said grimly. Hazard of the sport. Now let's move this thing before we're all crystal pancakes. They positioned themselves again. Todd braced with his good arm, knowing he'd have to use the broken one too if they had any chance of moving the column. 1, 2, 3. Both humans threw their full weight onto the lever. Todd felt a white-hot flash of pain as the broken bones in his arm shifted, but he didn't let up. The column groaned, shifted, and finally began to move. It's working, Zella cried. Don't stop. Wasn't planning to, Todd grunted, sweat pouring down his face despite the cave's chill. With a final heave, they created an opening just wide enough for the others to escape. Granulo helped the smaller aliens through first, then squeezed his rocky mass through the gap. Your turn, Todd told Zella, who was still staring at them with a mixture of horror and fascination. But your injuries will get a lot worse if we don't get out of here, Mika interrupted. Go. As Zella scrambled through the opening, a massive tremor shook the entire cavern. The ceiling began to collapse in earnest. Run, Todd shouted, shoving Mika toward the exit as crystal shards rained down. They sprinted through the unstable passages, ducking and weaving as the cave disintegrated around them. Todd's broken arm hung uselessly at his side, and Mika's movements were stiff from her freshly relocated shoulder, but neither slowed down. Almost there, Mika called, seeing light ahead. A final violent shake sent a massive formation crashing down directly in their path. Without hesitation, Todd dropped to the ground and slid underneath it baseball style, using his momentum to carry him through. Mika vaulted over a smaller section, tucking into a roll that would have impressed an Olympic gymnast. They burst from the cave entrance seconds before it collapsed completely, sending a plume of crystalline dust into the air. Both humans lay on the ground, coughing and gasping for breath. The assembled expedition stared at them in stunned silence. Professor Quacks hovered nearby, all 6 eyes wide with disbelief. You saved them, he finally managed. But at what cost? Your injuries are probably worse, Todd admitted, finally looking at his arm. The cast had split open, and even he had to wince at the unnatural angle. Yeah, definitely worse. Mika sat up slowly, favoring her injured shoulder. Got everyone out though. Worth it. The gathered aliens continued to stare, completely dumbfounded by what they'd witnessed. Zella pushed forward, all 4 arms, clutching different medical devices. Your pain levels must be astronomical, she exclaimed, scanning them. How are you still functioning, speaking, making jokes? Todd and Mika exchanged puzzled looks. It's just what humans do, Mika shrugged, then immediately regretted the movement. Okay, maybe no more shrugging for a while. But, Zella seemed unable to process what she was seeing. My research indicated you experience pain more intensely than other species. Your pain scale goes to 10. Yeah, Todd said, carefully cradling his re-broken arm. I'd say this is about a 7 now. Definitely need medical attention soon. A 7. The collective alien shriek was so loud it set off another minor tremor. What would constitute a 10? Professor Quacks demanded, hovering closer. Todd and Mika looked at each other again. Honestly, Mika said. We're kind of hoping never to find out. As the emergency medical transport finally arrived, hovering down from the violet sky, the aliens continued to stare at the two humans with a new kind of awe, and a dawning realization that perhaps they had completely misunderstood human pain responses from the beginning. I believe, Zella said slowly, recording every moment with her devices, that we may need to reconsider my initial hypothesis. You think? Todd laughed, then winced. Just wait until they give us the good painkillers, then you'll really see some weird human behavior. The medical team loaded both humans onto hovering stretchers, fussing over their vital signs, and muttering in concerned tones about catastrophic injuries and miraculous resilience. As they were lifted into the transport, Mika caught Todd's eye. Think they'll ever figure it out? Figure what out? That humans aren't special, because we don't feel pain, she said with a tired smile. We're special because we keep going anyway. The transport doors closed on the bewildered alien expedition, leaving Professor Quacks and Zella to completely reconsider everything they thought they knew about their bizarre human exchange students. The University Medical Center hummed with activity as doctors from 7 different species consulted on the humans' injuries. Todd and Mika lay in adjacent beds, surrounded by a dazzling array of medical technology that made Earth hospitals look positively prehistoric. So, Todd said, examining his new cast, a shimmering blue material that seemed to pulse with healing energy, on a scale of 1 to we're getting expelled, how much trouble do you think we're in? Considering we saved 4 students, and generated enough research data to fuel Zella's career for the next decade, Mika replied, I'd say we're probably getting academic credit. Dr. Plex hovered nearby, 15 optical appendages trained on various monitors. Remarkable, the doctor muttered. Simply remarkable. The healing technology. Todd asked. Yeah, it's pretty cool. No, Dr. Plex replied. Your physiology. Human Mika, you relocated your own shoulder joint without medical assistance, a procedure that would render most sentient species unconscious from pain.
Mika shrugged her good shoulder. Rugby teaches you to handle stuff on the fly. My coach once set his own broken nose during semifinals using just a water bottle and sheer determination. A horrified murmur rippled through the medical staff. And human Todd, Dr. Plex continued, you continued to use your fractured limb despite the original break being exacerbated with bone fragments dangerously close to severing major blood vessels. Well, when you put it that way, it sounds pretty dumb, Todd admitted, but we didn't exactly have many options. The medical bay doors slid open, admitting Professor Quacks Zella and what appeared to be the entire xenobiology faculty. Zella pushed forward, all 4 arms now dedicated to a single massive data tablet. I've completely reformulated my research parameters, she announced without preamble. My initial hypothesis was fundamentally flawed. Humans don't experience pain more severely than other species. They've simply developed psychological mechanisms to function despite it. Yeah, Todd said. That's kind of how humans work. But why? One of the faculty members asked. What evolutionary advantage could there be in disguising distress signals from your own nervous system? Mika snorted. Have you seen Earth's history? Being able to keep fighting with an arrow in your shoulder was pretty much a prerequisite for survival. Also, Todd added, admitting you're in pain isn't exactly encouraged in a lot of human cultures. Walk it off is practically a medical prescription where I'm from. This statement caused such consternation that 2 of the younger faculty members had to excuse themselves to recalibrate their understanding of sentient behavior. Dr. Plex's appendages twirled in agitation. But this defies all medical logic. Pain exists as a warning system to prevent further damage. Yeah, well, Todd gestured at his regrettably familiar cast. Humans have a complicated relationship with warning systems. We tend to ignore check engine lights too. Professor Quacks floated closer. I must apologize to both of you. We've been treating you as exceptionally fragile based on our misunderstanding of your pain scale. The fact that you consider your current injuries merely, what was your phrase? A 7. On a good day, Mika confirmed. These pain meds are excellent, by the way. Solid 5 now. Extraordinary, Quacks murmured. And yet you joke even now. Another human coping mechanism, Zella interjected, recording everything. Humor is pain deflection. I've started a complete catalog of human pain responses. So far I've documented sarcasm, profanity, inappropriate laughter, and something called dad jokes that Todd employs when particularly uncomfortable. I do not, Todd protested weakly. You asked the emergency medical team why the Crystal Cave couldn't get a job, Zella reminded him, then answered, because it was too shattered. That's pretty good actually, Mika snickered. The medical bay doors slid open again, this time admitting Granulo and several other students from the expedition, all carrying what appeared to be gift baskets. We come bearing traditional recovery offerings, Granulo rumbled, and profound gratitude. The rock-like alien placed a pulsating crystal formation beside Todd's bed. This is a resonance crystal that emits healing frequencies. It is our people's most treasured medicinal item. Other students came forward with their own gifts, exotic fruits, glowing liquids in delicate vials, and even a small purring creature that Mika immediately fell in love with. You guys didn't have to do this, Todd said, genuinely touched. We just did what anyone would do. But that's just it, one of the students replied. No one else could have done what you did. We've been calculating the force required to move that crystal column. Even with leverage, it should have been impossible with your muscle mass and skeletal structure. Adrenaline, Mika explained. Humans get a strength boost in emergencies. This prompted another round of frantic note-taking from Zella. Wait until I tell them about hysterical strength, Todd whispered to Mika. Zella might actually explode. Professor Quacks cleared his throat, or whatever passed for a throat in his species. In light of today's events, the university board has approved an emergency curriculum edition. Beginning tomorrow, we will offer a special seminar on human pain psychology and emergency response. We would be honored if you would both participate as guest lecturers. Todd and Mika exchanged surprised looks. You want us to teach a class about how humans handle pain? Todd asked. Precisely, Quacks confirmed. Your species' ability to function despite significant physical trauma could provide valuable insights for emergency protocols throughout the galactic community. Mika grinned. Can we include videos of skateboarding fails and rugby highlights? That would really drive the point home. The professor's eyes blinked in sequential confusion. You deliberately record instances of human injury for entertainment. Oh man. Todd laughed, wincing as the movement jostled his arm. Wait until they discover Jackass. As the medical staff and faculty continued to debate the philosophical implications of human pain response, Dr. Plex approached with what appeared to be floating syringes. These accelerated healing compounds should reduce your recovery time by approximately 87%, the doctor explained. Though I must insist you actually rest during the process, despite your species' apparent inclination to ignore medical advice. No promises, Mika said, eyeing the purring alien pet that had fallen asleep on her lap. But these beds are pretty comfortable. As the visitors gradually filtered out, leaving the humans to rest, Zella lingered behind, her forearms now occupied with organizing her extensive notes. I have a final question, she said hesitantly. If you weren't actually impervious to pain as I initially thought, why did you both so readily enter a dangerous situation despite your existing injuries? Todd and Mika exchanged a look that communicated volumes, the kind of understanding that comes from shared human experiences that might be difficult to explain to non-humans. Because, Mika said simply, some things are more important than avoiding pain. Zella considered this, her ocular ridges furrowed in concentration. I believe, she said slowly, I have a new research project to begin. As she left, they could hear her muttering the title to herself. Why humans say this is fine when everything is clearly not fine. A comprehensive study. Todd leaned back against his pillows with a sigh. Something tells me we're going to regret becoming research subjects. Probably, Mika agreed cheerfully. But at least they'll stop treating us like we're made of glass. True. And hey, on the bright side, if you make another dad joke, I will throw this alien pet at your head. Todd grinned. I was just going to say, at least now we have a legitimate excuse to skip exams. Outside the medical bay, Professor Quacks and Dr. Plex conversed in hushed tones. Should we tell them? Dr. Plex asked. About the scan results? Quacks's membrane fluttered nervously. That their pain tolerance exceeds every known sentient species by at least a factor of 3.
that their ability to function while injured defies our understanding of neurological systems, that their healing rate is, that the resonance exposure in the cave has temporarily accelerated their cellular regeneration. Dr. Plex interrupted. Their injuries will be completely healed by morning. Quacks considered. Perhaps we should observe how they react. For science, Dr. Plex agreed. Inside the medical bay, blissfully unaware of their impending miraculous recovery, Todd and Mika had already fallen asleep, their bodies quietly demonstrating yet another remarkable human trait, the ability to heal even while their conscious minds took a well-deserved rest. The university's largest lecture hall was packed beyond capacity. Students from every department had abandoned their regular classes to attend the special seminar, Human Pain Psychology, Understanding the It's Just a Scratches Phenomenon. At the front of the hall, Todd and Mika stood beside Professor Quacks, looking slightly uncomfortable with the attention. Behind them, a large screen displayed what appeared to be humans engaged in various painful activities, skateboarding accidents, rugby tackles, and something labeled Hot Pepper Challenge that had the alien audience collectively wincing. As you can see, Mika explained, gesturing to the screen with an arm that showed no sign of her shoulder injury from just days before. Humans often voluntarily engage in activities with a high probability of pain. But why? Called out a student from the back. Todd stepped forward. Risk assessment. Humans constantly weigh potential rewards against potential pain. Sometimes the reward, fun, social status, accomplishment, outweighs the pain risk. Like when Todd tried to jump his skateboard over a moving car, Mika added, the reward of looking cool was worth the 60% chance of breaking something. It would have been cool if I'd made it, Todd muttered. Zella, who had somehow appointed herself as the seminar's official recorder, raised one of her forearms. But what about the cave incident? There was no looking cool reward there, only certain injury and possible death. The lecture hall fell silent. Todd and Mika exchanged glances. That's different, Todd said quietly. Humans have another calculation we make, one that often overrides self-preservation. Mika nodded. When others are in danger, most humans will accept pain, injury, or even death to help them. It's not about being tough or impervious to pain. It's about deciding that something else matters more. A contemplative murmur spread through the audience. Professor Quacks floated forward. What our human guests are describing appears to be a complex moral framework that prioritizes group survival over individual comfort, a trait that may explain how their species survived on a planet that seems designed to kill them. We just call it not being a jerk. Todd shrugged. From the front row, Dr. Plex raised an appendage. Would you explain the apparent discrepancy between your actual injuries and how you describe them? Our initial misconception stemmed from human Todd describing a broken bone as not a big deal. Todd scratched his head. That's cultural, I guess. In many human societies, particularly for males, acknowledging pain is seen as weakness, so we downplay it.
Whereas in other human cultures, Mika added, particularly for females, pain is often dismissed by others, so we learn to emphasize it to be taken seriously. Yes, it really does hurt this much. This explanation caused such confusion that several universal translators briefly malfunctioned. So humans both exaggerate and minimize pain, Zella clarified, all four arms writing furiously. Sometimes simultaneously. Welcome to the contradictory mess that is human psychology, Mika laughed. As the seminar concluded, students swarmed forward with questions. Professor Quacks had to activate a sonic barrier to keep the humans from being mobbed by enthusiastic xenobiology majors. One final question, the professor announced, selecting a small tentacled student from the crowd. Yes, you. Is it true, the student asked timidly, that humans voluntarily ingest capsaicin, a compound that causes intense pain for pleasure? Todd grinned. Hot sauce. Oh yeah, some humans compete to see who can tolerate the spiciest food. The lecture hall erupted in a mixture of horror and fascination. I believe, Professor Quacks declared over the commotion, that we have much more to learn from our human exchange students. Later, as they walked across the crystalline campus, Todd and Mika found themselves treated with a new kind of respect. Students no longer rushed to help them with simple tasks or warn them about potential dangers. Instead, they were greeted with what could only be described as awed deference. "This is weird," Todd muttered. "Yesterday I dropped my stylus and 3 students dove to catch it before it could injure me. Today I tripped on the stairs and everyone just watched to see how I'd handle it. Like we're some kind of pain-tolerating celebrities," Mika agreed. "I'm not sure this is better." They rounded a corner to find Zella waiting, all 4 arms clutching different research instruments. "I've completed the preliminary findings for my new study," she announced without preamble. "Why humans say this is fine when everything is clearly not fine. Would you care to review it?" "Sure, why not?" Todd replied, taking the offered tablet. As they scanned the document, their eyes widened. "Zella," Mika said slowly, "this is actually pretty insightful." The alien preened slightly. "I've theorized that human pain tolerance is less physiological and more psychological, a complex adaptation involving humor, denial, social expectations, and altruistic override systems." "You've basically described the human condition," Todd said with a laugh. "Maybe you understand us better than we understand ourselves." Zella's ocular ridges rose in excitement. "Really? Then would you be willing to participate in my next research project? It involves stimulus response testing with various hard pass," both humans said simultaneously. "But it would advance interspecies understanding," Zella protested. "Some things," Mika said firmly, "aren't worth the pain." As they walked away, leaving a disappointed Zella behind, Todd nudged Mika with his elbow. "You know what the funny part is? All those aliens think we're these incredible pain-defying superhumans now. And we're just regular people who happen to do what needed doing," Mika finished. "Exactly. Nothing special about it." They paused at the edge of the university's central plaza, watching students of countless species going about their daily lives. The 3 suns of this alien world were setting in perfect synchronization, casting long, colorful shadows across the crystalline architecture. "Maybe that's the most human thing about us," Todd mused. "Not that we don't feel pain, but that we don't let it stop us from doing what matters." "That," Mika agreed. "And our weird obsession with spicy food." As they laughed together somewhere in the xenobiology department, Zella was already planning her next research project, human humor as pain deflection, a comprehensive analysis. Some human mysteries, it seemed, would take more than 1 semester to unravel.